conference season has kicked off and the Lib Dems are having their get-together on the South Coast. To that end, I'm very pleased to say that we're joined now by their Home Affairs spokesman, Ed Davey. Mr Davey, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
Mr Davey, I wonder if we can start with events in and around Parsons Green. I mean, in your capacity as Home Affairs spokesman, just how safe do you assess that we are in the UK at the moment?
Well, it's clearly very troubling. We're thinking about all those who've been directly affected, injured. We're very proud of the way the emergency services have tackled that. But we've got to remember that this year we've had 5 terrorist attacks get through our security shield. That's the largest number of attacks getting through for many years. So we need to think deeply about how we can keep our country safe. And that's going to look at everything from investing in our police at all levels, community police, as well as those directly attacking the anti-terrorists, and other issues. And Liberal Democrats here at Bournemouth will be debating exactly what we should do to defeat terrorism.
One particularly unhelpful intervention, as identified by yourself, was that of the President of the United States, Donald Trump. You suggest that it was insulting to the victims of the attack, that he shows that he is not fit for the office of US President. Any response thus far from the Oval Office?
Of course not. He only deals with his own ego. And that's what's so shocking. And it's not just on the terrorist outrage at Parsons Green. It's on issues like peace in Korea, where I'm afraid the current incumbent of the Oval Office, President Trump, is extremely irresponsible and uses his tweets in a way which I think undermines the search for peace and security.
But if number 10 can't corral the President into an appropriate position on days like this, I mean, what hope that the Liberal Democrats Home Affairs spokesman, I suppose the broader point here is, as Liberal Democrats gather in Bournemouth for their conference, I mean, what is the point of your party these days?
Well, I personally am rather more humble than you're suggesting. I wasn't thinking that Mr. Trump would change his mind. I was expressing my point of view. And you'd expect that from a Democrat politician. But our party is actually in much greater spirits than you might expect. We've had a bad 2 general elections, there's no doubt about that, and we need to be humble and clear about what went wrong. But we've had a massive increase in membership, more than doubled, and with lots of people joining the Liberal Democrats from the other political parties, but also from people who've not been involved in politics. And you have to ask yourself why they're doing that. I think they're doing that partly because of Brexit. People are very alarmed at what's happening to our country, turning our backs on the rest of the world. But also, they're looking for a party that's going to tell the real truths about what's happening in our world, to hold the powerful to account, whether it's in business and the corporates, whether it's government. I think they want a party that wants to take on the system, and Liberal Democrats have always been that when we've been at our best.
But the single biggest issue occupying British politics at the moment is, of course, Brexit. And you do have a somewhat distinctive position. Well, you did at least until the Labour Party decided to move slightly towards the soft Brexit option. I mean, I suppose, given that you have this distinctive position, given the fact that you haven't exactly seen any shift in the polls, you're still around about 7% where you were back at the general election, how can you convince those centrist Remainer voters to come to the party? You're clearly not doing it thus far.
Well, people are joining the party, but you're right, in terms of the ballot box, we're not yet getting that support. I think people are waking up to the fact that the Conservatives are completely divided and unable to give a leader, almost unable to negotiate. And they're not dealing with the issues that people care about outside Brexit, like the health service, like our police, like our schools. And I think Jeremy Corbyn may well have tweaked the Labour position, but it's increasingly clear that they are not the opposition to Brexit. They support Brexit. So we have 2 Brexit-supporting parties in Parliament and the Liberal Democrats. And you're right, we've got to persuade more people. I think we've got to reach out to Leave voters to explain why we think the European Union helps us be more secure and more prosperous, and also how we can address those concerns that they raised during the referendum and since.
Let's just for a moment, Mr Davey, consider the words of your Deputy Leader, Joe Swinson. You know, we haven't been able to make the connection yet and resonate with a lot of those in the centre. That's the task we need to get into. I mean, the radical solutions, the radical proposals, the policies for which Liberal Democrat Conference used to be famous for, they're simply not there anymore.
Well, I do agree with part of what Joe's saying. We do need to think fresh and think bold and go back to some of our radical roots. It's in there, in our policies. I don't think we've been getting it over. So, for example, climate change, which I've been responsible for both in government and outside. I think our message, which is pretty radical, is about making sure this change from the fossil fuel economy we've had for decades happens more quickly and involves people, empowers people, gives people lower energy bills as well as green energy bills. That's a real taking on the status quo. And I also think we need to do that in terms of inequality. Corporates and large businesses aren't being held to account properly. Jeremy Corbyn, in his election, managed to tune into that a little bit, but not in ways that would really ensure that corporates treated their workers, their shareholders, their employees much better. And Liberal Democrats need to get onto that core economic agenda. And with Vince Cable, I think we've got the leader to do just that.
Well, so you're essentially saying that the message is right, it's just a problem with the messenger. I'm sure Vince will be very pleased to hear that.
Well, I've said both, actually, if you listen to me. I said we do need to ensure that our message, which is the radical liberal message, where we want to shake up the system, as well as making sure we're investing in the key things that people want, their schools and their hospitals, that message gets over louder and more clearly. And we've got to do that while remaining very strong on the Brexit position. And I think under Vince, we have someone who is seen as a future Prime Minister. If you put him up against Theresa May or Jeremy Corbyn, I think the majority of people would rather have Vince in number 10 because he comes with huge credibility, particularly on the economy. The only person in British politics who called the financial crisis before it happened. A cabinet minister who put forward an industrial strategy to ensure that we had, for example, 2 million young people being trained as apprenticeships. That's a record in government, a record in the economics profession that no other leading politician has. So I'm delighted that he's leading the party. And I think as the messenger, he'll be one of the most effective we've ever had. But I think he knows we need to sharpen up our message. And when we do, I think you'll be surprised just how well we'll do.
Ed Davey, thank you very much for joining us. Hope you enjoy conference. It looks like you certainly got the weather for it.
Thank you very much.